Hey, thanks for coming by Tori Magoo 44. Today is March 18th. It's the day after St. Patty's Day. I hope you had a safe and happy St. Patrick's Day. Today, a few people have asked me to go over some things that many of you know, so this is a recap of it. You may learn something else, but either way, I want you to know this is kind of a recap for some people that have PM'd me saying, we really don't know what you're talking about. Can you please explain it? And most of you know what I'm talking about here. But anyway, here you go. What happened is, how I woke up, Scientology is like a pyramid. I got to the top, it didn't work, right? I spent 7 years trying to make it work. It still didn't work. Along that time, my auditor and best friend, Bill Yachty, a bunch of the critics got onto the internet is what happened. Originally, it was just a news group. And they were some ex-Scientologists that had left Scientology, and they were talking about top secret things about Scientology. Not meaning to talk about top secret things, it was just that's what they were, and Scientology didn't want anybody to know about them at the time, and they weren't on the internet like they are now. Everybody now we're 10 years later, actually 20 years later from when he started. He started, I think, whenever ARS started, I think it was 1990. And these guys were out. And Yachty started working with the Office of Special Affairs. That's an organization within the Church of Scientology. They say it's PR and legal. And that's what I thought it was. I worked on the PR end of things. But Bill was doing this stuff where he said, I'm handling the critics on the internet, right? I knew nothing about the internet at the time, had no idea. But I'd be over at their house just hanging out. They were friends of mine. And Bill would be like, hey, Tori, come on in here. Watch this, right? And what he had done, these guys were on the internet, various ex-Scientologists at the time, people who'd left, talking about Hubbard, Scientology, their experiences, and they were heavy-duty, hardcore stuff, right? That Scientology had never seen public, never been able to get out. No critics had ever been able to get this into the public's eye before. Because if they were going to do a media article on it, Scientology would get there and hammer the news or TV, and then they'd say, okay, we won't do it. So now it's on the internet, right? So they get Yachty to start handling the critics. And Bill basically created 10 different identities with phony email addresses. And I'll explain that in a minute. Okay, and then from these, let's say someone starts out, L. Ron Hubbard's a liar. So Bill would come on as Joe from Australia, right? He would open up an account and say, I'm from Australia, and, aren't you kind of being aren't you exaggerating about L. Ron Hubbard? And nothing would happen. So then he'd come on as someone else, Mary, and say, well, why are you bugging him about that? And he would just keep creating these identities until finally a real critic would say, you know what, I don't think you should be so mean to Mary. I know Mary, and I like her. And then it would become this whole fight about Mary. I like her, I don't, she's a creep, she's this, she's that. But the point was, it is now off of Scientology. It's completely off of L. Ron Hubbard was a liar onto Mary and what everybody thinks about her. And that was their intention. They had 3 goals on the internet, Bill told me. One was to distract off of L. Ron Hubbard or Scientology anything they didn't want known. 2 was to kind of degrade any of the ex-Scientologists or later critics and make people think less of them, not trust them, that kind of thing. And 3 was to just slime the area completely so that people would go, I don't even want to post here anymore. It's just too yucky, right? Those are their 3 goals. And every time you see them from someone who's doing it over and over and over, especially when nobody's met them, you can pretty much count on that's Bill Yachty and his little gang of people. Now, what he ended up doing, they needed more accounts, right? So he asked me to go open up these anonymous accounts. Now, this was before Anonymous. Remember, this was in the 90s, right? Anonymous came about in 2008. So this was long before then, but they were anonymous accounts. And he told me it's totally legal, it's totally okay. Just open up the accounts, get us the email address and the password, and we're in business. And I was like, well, what are you going to do with it? And he was like, look, these guys are horrible, these critics. And they are going to keep you in deposition forever. So it's better if I just don't tell you, then you can honestly say, I don't know what they were doing, right? It was a little weird, but I said, Bill, this seems really weird. And he looked at me and he said, Tori, trust me. And I did. I mean, he was my auditor. He was my best friend. I mean, I really, truly trusted him. So that began that. I started opening up these accounts. They started using them. I started waking up during this time because they seemed so weird and odd. And what they were trying to do with these accounts, they called it spamming, where it would drive, let's say L. Ron Hubbard's a liar is at the top of the page. They would start spamming down all this, Mary's this, she's that, I don't really like her, you shouldn't say that about her. All of this would drive down the L. Ron Hubbard's a liar onto the second page. That was their goal. They felt if they could get something onto the second page, and I think they're pretty right on that, nobody's ever going to read it. So you can always look down at the bottom of the page, and if there's something hot, pull it up, repost it. Because that's what they're trying to do, is get it off the page so nobody reads it, nobody sees it. Now, they failed utterly at this. I mean, I'm a perfect example where here I am. I mean, I was originally working for them. Once I woke up and realized they were stopping free speech, which is what they are really doing, I called Bill and said, first of all, I was really scared once I woke up. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. I didn't want to even get into it. And he said, okay, no problem. Just come on over. We just want to hear what happened, tell you what happened. So I go over to this apartment. It's all dark. It's all men. It's all OT7s and 8s. The door comes slamming open. It's Gavino who ran this from Osa Int and Yachty. And Gavino's screaming, I told you about her. I told you. And I'm like, you told him what? This is like my best friend. You told him what? What the hell's going on here? And it went on and on and on. And basically, it was like an hour-long thing of them screaming at me, what am I going to tell somebody, which I had no intentions of telling anybody. But I ended up running out of that apartment crying. Bill came running after me, and he knew. I was like, get away from me, get away from me. I mean, because I realized, A, this is not the organization I thought I was in. This is not a church. This is like the mafia. And B, I didn't trust Bill anymore at all. It's like whoever he used to be, he wasn't, at least, maybe he never was, but he certainly wasn't anymore. He was an excellent con man. I believed him inside and out. And so that is what, when I always say the Scientology Truman Show, and I say they hired me to do these, to open up these phony accounts, that's what I'm talking about. Now, there's websites all over the world, and the information is out on the net. So ARS is just it's one news group that few people even go to anymore, frankly. But thankfully, for everyone who has spoken out and continued to expose their abuses, they are failing utterly at continuing their abuses. More and more people are leaving, and it is because of people like yourself, whether you are an ex-Scientologist, a critic, who are the people that started fighting Scientology for the ex-Scientologists, in honor of them, kind of like saying, wait a minute, these guys, we don't know who they are, but they have a right to free speech on the internet. And then Scientology started attacking them. That brought in more critics. And then in 2008, Anonymous, because they tried to kick off Tom Cruise's video off YouTube. And the guys on YouTube said, not on our watch. This is a new one. All right. So anyway, way to go for everyone who has helped expose this insidious cult. I thank you greatly. And please continue with it, because this is one fantastic year. And it's just getting better. And I love you. It's my frog. So remember that. Okay? All right. Have a fantastic weekend. And I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.